I don't know, it's like a book.
Subscribe to the Geek Legion of Doom in 7 days.
House at the Edge of the Woods, directed and co-written by Brandon Hardstock, and this is a 2025 found footage horror movie. What's the story? Well, it focuses on 4 paranormal investigators as they are hired to do an investigation into a guy's missing father. Apparently he disappeared into the woods, seemingly into some kind of strange lights, and the authorities have no idea what's happened. It's been a little while now, so now this homeowner is looking at other avenues, so he gets these investigators to try and, come up with a less conventional reason why the father may have gone missing. So they do this investigation, and there does seem to be something paranormal, supernatural going on. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what I think works in this movie's favour. For me, the biggest plus point on this one was the sound design, because this is a low budget movie. It can't afford to do a huge amount in regards to VFX and kind of big things happening on screen, but I think what the movie does have is a real dark woods kind of like visuals, but then these strange sound effects that's kind of layered in over the top of it to kind of really give it this sort of spooky factor where you can't really see what's going on, but you can clearly hear that there's these unnatural sounds and kind of branches cracking and stuff in the distance, so you clearly get the idea that there is kind of something out there. And I think this is done really well. I mean, the visuals are, there's nothing flashy here, but nonetheless there is a kind of spookiness to the way that these woods are presented. Misty sort of lights coming through the darkness. This woods have got a variety of mannequins that have been placed out there. We're told it's because the father used to kind of like target shooting, and that's why they're there. But they're kind of obviously give this kind of ominous sort of look. So that's all sort of pretty creepy. I think the acting, for the most part, is fairly strong across our 4 investigators. I think they do a pretty decent job with kind of likeable characters who seem to kind of get on, and there's no real inflated drama. I think some of the times that you have in found footage movies is this kind of like personal animosity that kind of flares up in these type of things, and really that's there just to kind of pad out the runtime with kind of, as I say, extra kind of drama that I think seems a little typical. This one doesn't really have that. There's some frank discussions between them. There's a little bit of temper slaying, but for the most part, I think they all get on pretty well and seem like likeable fellows. And the performances, I think, were all fine for those guys there. There's some kind of spooky shenanigans kind of going on, possibly involving kind of duplicates and things. I don't want to say too much about the plot, but there's clearly stuff happening, you might say, and the way the camera is split with 2 locations and stuff, you can clearly get the idea about maybe what's kind of going on. There's possibly if you look in the credits, there's a clue there about the casting, about what's actually kind of happening. Again, I won't say too much. It is somewhat vague, I will say, but there's a clue in the casting if you look at the descriptions about what people are playing. But so there's clearly, obviously, something going on, and there are a few kind of creepy scenes here that I think are done reasonably well. I've got to say, for me personally, I actually thought the first act, the setup, was the strongest, because I think it sets up an intriguing mystery, and then we sort of see the footage of the father kind of like walking towards this sort of misty light in a kind of trance. It's like a pretty intriguing kind of setup, and we learn that our paranormal investigators have done a bunch of these kind of things before, so that was all pretty good. And in the end, kind of, you know, this is the typical kind of found footage sort of situation where it's the final act of the movie where all things kind of go. And that leads me into what doesn't work, because I really feel this is a very typical found footage movie. In actual fact, I would say it's a little bit of a old-fashioned found footage movie where I think it has a lot of the negative tropes that were associated with the kind of the earlier days of found footage movie. What do I mean? Lots of shaky cam. So in this movie, you know, when you've watched a few of these kind of style films, some stick out more than others in regards to this, but this has a lot of like running around with the camera being flung all over the place, and therefore I actually genuinely got a little bit of kind of like motion nausea here. I was like, oh, I feel a bit like, oh, really the first time it's ever happened to me. But there's a lot of it. There's a lot of kind of swinging the camera around and kind of just, you know, moving at high speed and stuff, so you can't really see what's going on. The other thing is this is lots of kind of like little glimpses of things, rather than really sort of ever the camera settling on a supernatural element for too long to kind of give you a good idea about what's going on. It's very kind of quick glimpses and little hints about what's going on, but nothing is ever really sort of shown as a kind of a money shot. Maybe it's a tad more towards the end, but even then I would say that it's kind of more mundane in what it does show you in some respects. So again, I found this movie a little bit kind of frustrating to a degree in regards to it being so vague about what's kind of going on, and I'll touch on that again in a second. I've mentioned I think the performances are all okay from our four investigators, but our homeowner, I think Jeremy, the character's name is, you know, he's obviously been told to act a little bit weird, and I think he leans into that a little bit too much, because like the guy is just acting like so over the top in regards to let's act a little bit weird, to, you know, let's overdo it, let's overcook it to a degree. So I think his performance was erring on the side of hammy. I think the movie's a little bit too vague about what's kind of going on. It's throwing up lots of kind of, oh, spooky stuff. You know, oh look, something weird's going on. There's kind of some kind of markings, and there's sort of like something moving around and things like this. And we get a glimpse of like, hang on, if this person's here, how can they be there? That sort of thing. But I really feel the movie doesn't ever really give any solid explanation about what's going on. Now, as I say, you can kind of read some of the kind of the character descriptions on the credits that will give you an idea, but you shouldn't have to do that. And even then, I still don't think it's really particularly kind of clear about what's actually happening. And the movie is a narrative, it's a story, and I do not think this movie takes you on a journey. I think it's just like spooky stuff, weird camera, you know, flashes of things happening on screen. I think the movie gets a good ambience, and I think it has a few kind of creepy moments in it, but it's just lots of chaotic stuff happening on screen, lots of kind of cameras getting flung around, you know, lots of like, oh, something's happening, but I don't really understand it. You're not the only one, pal. You're not the only one. So I've got to say, I think this movie is suffering for a little bit of like old-fashioned style of found footage movie. I don't think it really is a particularly kind of interesting narrative, because it doesn't really sort of it wants to be so vague that it kind of leaves you a little bit perplexed about what's actually happening. And as you said, there's a few other issues I've mentioned. I'm going to be honest with you, in the plethora of found footage movies that are available, I have to say this one's probably a little bit below average movie, but not being terrible, but sort of a one which maybe only for ardent found footage movie fans. So it's a 4 out of 10 for me. What were your thoughts if you've seen it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Subscribe now. It's the best decision.